What up, everybody? You guys are tuned in to another episode of the Business is Blooming podcast. I got the homie on the show, Mr. Country Rap Tunes, Screwed Up Click Representative, Mr. Toe Down. And I tell you what, man, this motherfucking show gonna be full of Houston slang, you know what I'm talking about? Because it's gonna go down. I don't know if y'all know about this man, but this man is a Houston legend in the game, man. And I am ecstatic to have you on the Business is Blooming podcast, homie. Appreciate it. Much love from the city to VA.
I'm just happy to be here. Thanks for having me on Business is Blooming, and we're about to get into some business, so stay tuned. So if you're trying to bloom or you're trying to grow, this might be the show for you.
Already. So, man, first things first, man, I know you, man, but for my viewers that don't know you, maybe up in Virginia and across the East West Coast, man, who are you, man, and what's your story?
So been in the music business over 25 years. If you heard rap music come out of Houston between 2000 and 2011, either we recorded it, mixed it, mastered it, produced it, engineered it. Some way, somehow, our fingerprint was on the record. So Chameleonaire riding dirty, still tipping on fofos, Paul Wall, Mike Jones. We recorded Lil Wayne while he was at U of H, doing his mixtapes and stuff. Bun B, UGK, 8 Ball, you name it. If you were in the city of Houston and you were recording music, like I said, we had one of the first all-digital studios here in the city of Houston. I had some success with a song called The Country Rap Tune that allowed me to get the studio and then later, further my career. And then around 2007, 2008, the feds are in town. And at the time of my federal indictment, we had 21 grow houses. 7 of us were indicted, and we were looking at, 40 years for growing, weed in Houston, And so basically came home in 2017, thanks to Barack Obama. He signed into law that if you were a nonviolent drug offender, you could get some time off. And so I was eligible for about 10% off my time, which led me out the door a little bit early. And then upon my release, man, I was like, all right, back to the music business. Let's see what's popping. COVID kind of hit, and that's when I got into crypto and NFTs. And that's really how the whole Dope Heads NFT cartoon started to take off and do its thing. And so now we are the producers of an animated series called The Dope Head. So that's kind of the short and quick. So from music to the feds, back around to some dope heads. So
yeah, man, we gonna dive into each one of those sectors in just a few, man. But as y'all can see, man, it's big smoke on the Business is Blooming podcast, man. Just the names he mentioned, man, are the names that I grew up listening to and admiring, and just it's through and through me. It's Houston, man. So man, shout out to what you did for the city, man, and we're gonna get right back. We're gonna get right into it, man. So, can you share some insights on your journey as a Houston rapper, bro?
Yeah. So, back when we were doing, most of our early recordings, we were in that whole CD era where we had a distribution in our backyard with Southwest Wholesale. And at the time, we could get, $6, $7 a record. So you could sell 100,000 records between Houston, basically Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, all the way out to Alabama, Mississippi, Kansas City. You could make a nice living as an independent artist, slanging some mixtapes or mixed CDs at the time. And basically I was introduced into rap by my older brother, and he would listen to Run DMC and the Beastie Boys, but mine was UGK and DJ Screw. And the first time I listened to a Screw tape, I was like, man, I think your batteries are busted or something on that, man. You need to fix it. Not knowing, just being ignorant. but I soon, gravitated towards that lifestyle, heavily influenced with codeine and popping pills and sipping on drink and, smoking good doja.
Shit show.
And so basically it really, took on a lifestyle, it was not just screw music. It was a screwed up way of life that we were all living,
Straight up.
where, jump in the studio, get you a pint, get you a QP and, get to work. And so, I was introduced to that lifestyle, and I just fell in love with the music and the culture and what Houston was all about. And, you could basically go platinum independently just from selling 100,000 records. And so out the trunk of the car. And so I was fortunate enough to meet a guy named Hawk. So Big Hawk introduced me to Screw and then the rest of the clique from there. But at the time, if you needed some good doja, I happened to know the guy who was the guy, the way people were getting it back then, you either got it from California or you had a plug in California, and that's how you got the good stuff that was going around. But the stuff that we had was fresh off the plant. Like, it was grown here in Houston. The guy that was growing it, he was growing Northern Lights number 7. You could only get maybe a quarter pound at a time. And you had to wait another 3 months, 4 months to even get another quarter pound. So it really wasn't, that hard, it was really hard to get. And so I remember I was selling $50 grams of Northern Lights number 5. I would literally buy everything he had, which would be, sometimes it'd be 3 ounces, sometimes it would be 5 ounces. It was never really consistent, and it never really was enough, because as soon as you were able to smoke it, even though it still was green and it didn't have time to cure, because it was super sticky, it was good. I remember waving it just so we could get it dry enough to burn it,
Right.
So it was just that good and that fresh. And I'll never forget the way people responded to it. As soon as you gave somebody a gram of that, I mean, it made the California stuff look like Mexican dirt weed. And the California stuff was beautifully and crystally and smelled good. But it was just, when you're able to have it fresh off the plant as compared to stuffed in a bag, not cured properly, or whatever it may be, there was just a light and day difference. And when I saw that, people wanted to pay that top dollar for the good stuff. If you got the good stuff, people will pay top dollar for it. And I remember the guy was growing like super skunk, and we would put it in mason jars and vacuum seal the mason jars, and we could sell an ounce of super skunk in a mason jar for $750.
Where has time went? Where has time went? Because I know I'm dropping dank. So
yeah.
I'll tell you a little short story of me and my first encounter with Big Hawk, man. Rest in peace to Big Hawk, man. I was going to Texas Southern University, and if anybody knows, Big Hawk lived like right off the corner of like Texas Southern University. You can throw a rock and hit his house, right? So I didn't know that at the time. I just pulled up and I'm going to school. And Lil Wayne Drought, I think it was the Drought 2 had dropped at the time, right? So me not knowing who house I'm in front of, I pull up banging Lil Wayne. And all of a sudden I hear a tap, tap, tap on my window. So I look, oh shit, that's Big Hawk. He's like, man, what you listening to, man? Hey, I got something for you, man. This that H-Town stuff, man. Put that in your deck and bump it, man. Before H-Town stuff had even released on the radio, bro, he was passing out the CDs, man. And that's another thing. I don't think the H-Town stuff got to take off like it should have because of the unfortunately and untimely death of Big Hawk, man. So rest in peace, Big Hawk, man. That's the only encounter that I had with him, but I'll cherish that moment, man, because motherfucking Big Hawk put a CD in my hand. You know what I'm saying? So
if you got to meet Hawk, you really got to meet and know a genuine person. This guy would give you the shirt off his back. I mean, he was a gracious host. He was everyone's friend. He never had an enemy. So for him to, pass away the way he did, unexpectedly, really like he didn't have a beef with anybody. I mean, there was no ill will in that dude
Gentle
at all.
soul.
And the guy was
Yeah,
truly
5-star general, man.
a really a genuine dude, and he was really stand up. And I can't say enough for what he did for my career, introducing me to Screw, and then going on from there. It was really a blessing to have Hawk in my life.
For shit show, man. For shit show. So, like, yo, we gonna pause real quick, man, and we gonna fire one up for Big Hawk, man. And matter of fact, we gonna fire one up for all of our fallen H-Town legends, man. Big
That's what's
Steve,
up.
Big Hawk, Fat Pat, 3-2. You know what I'm saying? Big Mo, Pimp C. We gonna fire up, man. What you smoking on, man? I'm smoking some King Neptune. King Neptune is a collab project between me and the supply chain. So I am the lead breeder of supply chain, man. So
Man, that's
salute
awesome.
to you, man.
So we got over here, we got some blue cotton candy. Matter of fact, let me go. Sorry about that. I wanted to be well prepared. So
No worries.
we got the purple Sprite. That's some ooey goodness. I don't know if you can check that out, but that's
Beautiful.
purple Sprite right there. It reminds me of that DJ Short blueberry. We also got some lemon berry crisp. For them boys that know about that lemon berry crisp, this is probably one of my favorites. Super crystally, super ooey goodness.
Lemon berry crisp. It looks like it's nice here on that.
Then we got some blue cotton candy. It's a crossbreed of some blueberry. Oh man, like you just never forget that taste. That's just some ooey. And then we have some Hawaiian haze. Probably one of my favorite strands. I love a good haze. You just don't get blowed like off some good haze, and that's extra crystally for you. So those are the four that we're puffing on right now.
Nice. So Toe Down still got the smoke.
It's one of those things. When I was being arrested by the federal agent, he says, by the time you get out, it's going to be legal. And I was like, well, why the fuck are you even arresting me then? If you know it's going to be legal, I know it's going to be legal. Why are we still fucking with this? But when you live in a real nice neighborhood and you're a rapper and you're on TV and people necessarily don't like what you do and you really pissed off some people in some high places, they don't like the fact that you're sitting courtside after you bonded out of jail. They don't like the fact that you went and bought a brand new 600 Benz after your second bond. They don't like that, I was just stupid. When you have money and you're young, you'll a fool and his money will soon be departed. Basically it. And that's the way it was. I believed I wasn't going to live very long. I got to live every day to its fullest. I'm going to spend mine. I'm going to, blow it off how it goes. And my brother's just the total opposite. He's the analysis by paralysis type guy. He likes to look both ways before he crosses the street. He likes to dot every I, and so he's really the Toyota Camry type person. Rather go
the smart one.
He's one, and I'm more of the hey, let's just jump off this bridge and we'll figure out how to swim in a minute. And he's like, let's read a book on how to swim first, But
so I got a question for you, bro. So from transitioning from music to cannabis, man, what motivated you to get into the cannabis industry, bro? Because when you got into it, bro, this was early Texas, and Texas don't play that, So what motivates you to drop your cojones?
Well, it's like music and marijuana have this symbiotic relationship. They go hand in hand ever since the early jazz musicians in New Orleans or wherever it may be. Music and marijuana just went hand in hand. Wherever there's a studio session there's some good doja around, It just takes the edge off, in a good freestyle session, it might help you out. And so when I saw other people, smoking, I thought to myself, well, I know where to get better stuff, and I can, provide not only studio time, but I could also provide you with the weed. So you don't have to go spend any money anywhere else. This is a one-stop shop where you got, your album recorded, you picked up a quarter pound of weed, everything was all in one spot, and you didn't have to go meet anybody at the corner store, or, it was just a different time,
Sure.
back then, I was just telling my buddy, we were selling quarter pounds for $1,400 a quarter pound, and that was really in our main heyday. Like, that's what just the numbers were, and now you can get almost a whole pound for $1,400 for the whole thing. It's just, the game is so saturated now. And when we were growing back then, everybody really helped each other out because the grow community was so small for Houston. And if you were able to get into that small group, you were really in for a good surprise, because everybody wanted to help everybody else. Because there would be a time
talk about that, bro. You got to talk about that, because when I speak, bro, I didn't even know that there was a grow scene in Houston, bro. When I think of Houston and growing weed, it's only synonymous with you and your brother, of course. But I don't know anybody, bro. So you got to go into that a little bit, man.
So it's kind of like cracking the code, right? If you were a weed connoisseur and you knew the difference between outdoor and indoor when you just picked it up, or you knew the difference between what we called BC bud back then or Cali weed, the only places you could get weed back then was California and BC, right? And so either it would come in these vacuum sealed bags, or it'd come in turkey bags, right? And you kind of knew where it came from at that point, right? But the problem with the BC bud is it all smelled the same. There was no smell to it. It looked great, but there was just no smell to it. And then the stuff you'd get from California, it would smell great, but they couldn't sell it to the dispensary, so you got all the boo-boo. You got the spider bite. You got the mold. So you got everything that they didn't want, And to try to educate somebody on what crystals are and what the difference between crystals and what mold looks like, you're educating people on this, And so if you were lucky enough to stumble upon my weed, or somebody that had my weed, and you were that guy out of your neighborhood, you found your way to me, right? The prices were high enough, but you had to come with some paper in order to get even in the group. And then if you could get a pound of it, you knew somebody who was growing. You couldn't get it in 4, 5, 6 pounds. That didn't come around until me and my brother came in and started flooding the streets with the weed. You were lucky enough to get a pound from a grower for a complete year. Most people, they would do like, 2 or 3 1,000 watt lights, and they would get a pound of light, and that would be their harvest for, 6 months or maybe 5 months. And you were lucky enough to get a pound or two. And it wasn't until we started doing, 2.5, 3 pounds of light, 1,000 watt lights, and we would put 6 to 9 lights in every house that we had. So every 99 days, we could come down with 20 to 35 pounds, depending on which house we were dealing with. But we had one coming down every week. So when you have more than 12 houses, now you can have one come down once a week, and you can have that 25-pound consistency a week. Well, now I can drop off 5 to you. I can drop off 5 here. I can sell 5. My brother can sell 10. And every week you're hitting those numbers. Some you might get 20. Some you might get 35, just depending on what house and what strand we were doing in that house. But it really went until that point where you could even get that type of amount. You couldn't find it. And if you got the stuff from California, like I said, you might get 5 pounds of this. It might smell good. It might look good, but it's not consistent. There's not enough good growers putting good packages together. You're getting the leftovers, And so
I want to ask you, man, what was your setups like? What What type of lights were you running? What type of grow median?
I did it
And
all. Listen, if you saw something in High Times magazine, I owned it. You know, I did everything from, we started out with aeroponics, then we went to hydroponics, rock wool, we did the grow dan, the whole thing. We did the deep water culture. We did everything that could bring you an edge. We wanted to try it out. But nothing could beat good old peat moss and a potted plant, you know, and the dirt. You just can't beat that, right? And so I always believed in intensity equals density. You know, I don't want a 600-watt light when I can use 1,000-watt light, right? Because that 1,000-watt light is going to bring me that intensity because I'm trying to mimic the sun. You know, I'm trying to replace it. It really wasn't until the last 5 or 6 years ago until LEDs really became really good that you could even use good LEDs. You know, you'd use
that's
LEDs.
what I was thinking.
And your plants would come out wispy. You know, it would look good, but they were wispy. And so I would use HPS predominantly through the entire cycle. The only time I use like the blue metal halide is when I was like maybe for like growing my moms, but I would get, you know, a T5 fluorescent and let that grow my moms, you know?
Yeah.
You really didn't need a lot for your moms because usually if you could time it right, when you went to go flip your plants into bloom, you would do a trim where it could produce enough clones for your next cycle.
Right.
So until I really had things timed out, I really didn't even need moms at that point. But prior to then, we ran 22 different kind of mom plants. If there was a Cannabis Cup winner or somebody had a plant that produced, you know, fairly well, we had the plant, whether it was, you know, OG Kush or Kim Dog or AK-47, White Widow, Blueberry, Bubblegum.
Yeah, I had a lot of bubblegum.
Shoreline. We had it. And so back then that network of growers was small. And if you had a plant that was producing, you wanted to share it with that grower because when your weed's not ready and theirs are, it's consistent. You know, hey, this is getting me, you know, 3 pounds of light. You might want to look into this, you know, Blueberry White Widow, or hey, this Sweet Tooth number 3 is really putting out some numbers. You might want to fuck with it. And you know, that's the way it kind of operated. And so the guys that were in that circle really fucked with each other, you know. You could, you know, call and get clones if you needed to, or if you were having, you know, bug problems and you had to, you know, start over again, you knew you could go get good plants from people, you know.
Nice.
So,
man, bro, that's dope as hell to know that, bro. Just to know that my city was doing that when I thought we wasn't, because bro, until you guys got big, bro, I was smoking a lot of seeded Mexican weed, bro. Like, and that was, but what was crazy, bro, is that was weed.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? That's what we knew to be weed.
Listen, I had my fair share of Mexican dirt weed and getting dropped off 10 pounds on your driveway by the guy that doesn't speak very good English, and you know you don't see him for a week, and then sometimes you see him twice a week, and you know, it was just one of those things, you know, you buy them for $2, sell them for $4.50, or, you know, buy them for $2 and break 1 or 2 down. You know, I was there. I started out slinging 3 for $10, you know, that's the way I got my little, you know, the first 2 ounces I ever sold were, you know, quarter bags. And I was like, it just sold so easily to me. You know, I like to smoke. People I hung out with smoke. And so for a long time, it really didn't feel like I was selling drugs. I was just hooking up the homies with the weed, you know? And that's the way the music thing was really kind of taking off. Everybody I was fucking with was smoking. It just so happened that all these guys were doing music too, you know? So
and that's what I wanted to ask you, bro. Like, how was that even possible, bro? You maintaining that many operations and still writing and rapping and recording, bro. Like, your life had to be hectic at that time.
People needed something to write about. My life was pretty much, you know, what they were writing about. You know, people talked about trapping and rapping, but I was really doing it, no cap, you know. It was one of those things where, you know, I lived it. So it was real easy to write about it. Right. But then you get on this thing where you're like, damn, am I really talking too much about it? Like, am I really, you know, doing myself a disjustice by letting everybody know what I'm doing? But really, the weed was the ultimate business card. It got me into a lot of radio stations that I wouldn't have ever gotten to before. It got me into people's groups and circles that I would have never been able to meet before. I remember, Cash Money would come to town and they'd make a phone call to a promoter and I would show up, and I just became, the ambassador for the city. If you needed good, Doty, you knew how to get a hold of me. And so a lot of those guys were interested in also recording. So we could go record at my studio, and at the same time, you could pick you up, a travel pack and keep it moving. And then, people love stopping in Houston. We got good food here. You got good weed now with Toe Down. You got a nice place to record. Shit, this is better than LA, I remember Killer Mike told me he felt like he was in an episode of Pulp Fiction, It was just, we had different flavors while most people could barely get their hands on one flavor. We would have 4 or 5 different flavors, and they were all grade A, they were all 100%. So, yeah, maintaining that lifestyle was easy because music and marijuana went together. Everybody who I was smoking with was making music and vice versa, so it was
I'm just thinking, bro, at that time, bro, our equipment or the equipment wasn't like we have it today, bro. So I know you had to be a lot of hands-on, like I think you had maybe over 800 plants at one time. Like,
so how we manage that is when you start to figure stuff out, you start to figure when's the best time to run a lot of electricity, right? It's a lot harder to cool lights when the sun is out, right? So if I can start my day period at night or when it's getting closer to dark, now I can set my schedule differently. Most people record till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning anyway, so I would be able to set up my grows where my grows would start coming on around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I could go water them, do what I need to do. By 10:30 or 11, I had already put in work in all the grow houses and ready to go work in the studio. And then when I get done with the studio, I could go back and check on all my grows because we'd still be growing in some of those spots where I had started them late enough so I can make sure and maintain them and check them. And, I learned early on that you don't want to be watering plants halfway through the day. You want to water them when the lights first come on. You want to be in those rooms when those lights first come on, And so I would really plan my day when the lights would come on. That's when I went to work. And then once all that work was done, that's when all the studio stuff and all that stuff started happening. But it became a point where we were making so much money with the weed, I didn't really feel like doing the music, full time because shit, motherfuckers were talking about going popping bottles in the club and hanging out with celebrities and eating in nice restaurants. And that's what I do every day. I go eat stone crab on Mondays and it's just what I was doing every day. So I was already enjoying the fruits of my success without really having to be a huge, star, So the music, it was like, if the music, made some noise, great. But if it didn't, it's okay too, because we're slanging bows and it's really not even a problem. And I'm living this lifestyle that everybody's rapping about or trying to rap about, but I'm really out here thugging and I hop up in the Escalade or jump in the Benz or, at the time, shit, we had the house. I had my house, a beach house, a lake house. So all right here in Texas, you can go. We had a spot on the north side of Lake Travis. So if you want to go hang out on the lake for the weekend or you want to go down to Galveston, everything was so close to us in proximity where you couldn't leave for a long period of time, but I could leave for a day or two and come back. And so that's why a lot of my music was local because I could go to Louisiana for a day and come back, where I don't have to worry about leaving my grow alone. You always have to be in those rooms. You have to know when is the CO2 on? Is, the plants being fed at the right time? Are they
we couldn't monitor it from our phones at that time either, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, whoa.
What's the humidity like in the rooms, is the air temperature correct, And so back then when you're growing, you have to be on top of all that shit. And, the same way my brother was with putting together budgets was the same way I was doing my own work in the lab. Like making sure we wrote down when we fed, how long we fed, what the parts pavilion was, what the EC was, and so if we wrote it all down, we can compare, all right, well, we got 6 pounds off of these lights doing it this way. When we add more phosphorus and potassium in the later stages, we were able to get more this way. And so taking a whole bunch of notes just made life easier because you don't get that many shots at growing and messing up. If you mess up early enough, you might as well throw away that crop. It's never going to recover, So making sure it grows from start to finish without, there being any problems is extremely important. That's what makes the difference between having, a successful crop and shit that's not going to come out way right,
No, for sure. I got my bubble popped the other day, man, because I thought I had got too good and I stopped taking notes. And I had Rasta Jeff, shout out Rasta Jeff, man, on the show the other day, and I asked him the same question, bro, and he was like, "I still take notes in my garden."
You got
I was like, "Well, who do I think I am?" You know what I mean? Let me get back to the basics, man. I got big headed, started growing fire, and thought I was a shit. So yeah, I'm gonna get back to note taking.
Yeah,
but I got a question for you.
Go for it.
Cannabis related, collaborating with the Houston Legends, what are some of your most memorable moments and lessons learned from those collaborations?
We're talking about cannabis now?
I mean, if you can't tie it to cannabis, then I just want to hear a collaboration that you really enjoyed and you learned something from it.
Well, musically, I enjoyed a lot of great collaborations because, like I said, we were a good spot that had great weed and we're able to record on Pro Tools and everybody loved to record there. So watching Lil Wayne record or watching Bun B record has always been a real treat, to see somebody that has so much talent really make something look so effortless is really amazing, right? But as far as, cannabis related, it really wasn't until like my third or fourth year that I understood the basic growing principles where I understood what I was doing, right? And it really wasn't until about that fourth or fifth year where I learned from an OG that less is more. And I've been able to utilize that in my life more than anything. When I'm mixing a record, less plugins is usually better than a whole bunch of plugins, right? I don't need to use every plugin. Why am I using it? Is something wrong? Do I need to correct it? And that's been able to give me a nice, motto to live by, right? Don't fuck with it if it's not broken. There's no reason to put all this extra shit on there when you don't need to. Less is more. And so that's where I kind of really take what I've learned from growing weed and applying it in my life. Less is more.
For sure, Joe. I agree, man. When I first started growing, I was so hands-on, man. I wanted to baby the plants. But at the end of the day, these are weeds, bro. And they can take a licking. Do you want them to take a licking? No. But you do want to push them. You want to push them to the brink of their max capacity. Obviously, genetics play a huge role in that, man. And I love where I've come now, bro. I got the automatic setup. I'm running a Hydrolock system, Jax 321, and everything's controlled from my phone, man. I just come in here and take it in. It comes in. Come in here and talk to legends like you, So I think that's pretty dope.
The game has definitely changed. I remember still to this day, we used to mix, a very simple general hydroponic solution, ABC. And I still remember using air stones to make sure that the water was aerated well.
Oxygenated. Yeah.
I remember making sure, hey, it's below, 70 degrees water temp so we can get the most oxygen in the water. And making sure we use reverse osmosis water so we could pack it with the chemicals we wanted in there instead of using the chemicals that were already in there burning up the plant. And so, I remember those things. And I remember having to take the garden hose and the sump pump and go and water each plant by hand. And,
man.
Even though it might be a little bit harder than, let's say, an automated system, when I'm able to water each plant by hand, I can see each plant, I can touch each plant, I can feel them in the plant, right? I know what the plant's going through. When I started getting into the automated stuff and the air cooled lights and timers and pumps and all this other stuff, my life was supposed to be simpler, but it got more complicated, right? I'm checking pumps to make sure they don't get clogged. Now I'm making sure that that last plant is getting fed as much as the first plant, and so you try to do things to make your life simple, but it just complicates it sometimes. And so bringing it back to the basics has been one of those things that it's something you do when you grow weed, just break it down to the basics. What does the plant need? It needs light, it needs food, it needs water, you're good to go. Don't try to overcomplicate things.
What is the plant telling you? You know what I mean? What is the plant?
And most people, and I recommend this, if you're a first-time grower, grow the plant just with water the first time. See what your genetics are able to pump out by themselves without anything, right? Then you have now a starting point, right? Before you start adding all this extra, all this bloom enhancer and this sweetener and all this other stuff that you're adding at the end, see what your plant can just do by itself. You'll be amazed at what your plant is able to do just with water, right? Start there and then start to add and build and go from there. By the time I was done, I was pumping the room with 2,500 parts per million of CO2. I could take my parts per million of my feed all the way up to 2,700 parts per million without them burning. It was just a different level. It was like adding steroids to a plant where they would get so heavy you'd have to tie them up or they would break, snap, and making sure we lollipop each plant so we're just growing a concentrated bud on the end of the bud, instead of growing a whole bunch of scraggle at the bottom that you're not going to be able to see anyway,
So grow the top bud.
Still remember super cropping and doing all that,
So looking ahead, man, are there any more aspirations for music or potentially venturing into the legal cannabis market?
So, with being a founder of a brand called the Dope Heads, weed and drugs are just part of my life. It's what I've come to be known for. People always are entertained when I tell them stories from my past. And so I've been fortunate enough to really, take on this brand called the Dope Heads, where it allows me to do this animated series where I can involve all of my friends from the music business. Scarface, he's voicing a character, and Little Flip and Flavor Flav and Devin the Dude, and all these guys are voicing characters in this animated series. So it's taking that music, taking that dope, taking it all together and making something really, entertaining, and so that's what the brand is basically encompassing. And, my whole thing was when I was released from federal prison, I wanted to make sure I reach back and I help with prison reform and I help people with substance abuse problems. Yeah, we can laugh and have a good time and make fun of ourselves as dope heads on an animated series. But when you do the right thing, people get more involved because you're doing the right thing. You don't have to fake it. You don't have to pretend. Just do you. And the person that you are, it transcends. It transcends music. It transcends animation. It transcends whatever you're trying to do, And when I pass, I want people to say, hey, that dude Toe Down, he was 100, just like they do Hawk, And so,
100.
100. The way music has been able to benefit my life, I couldn't thank God enough for introducing me to Mary Jane. Like weed has brought and taken me to more places than I could ever imagine, and still to this day, So shout out to Mary Jane. She really did put a number on your boy.
For sure, man, and that's why I'm so enthused, bro, to have this platform and to have people on my platform like you that really love the plant. But not only that, bro, but you're from my city. And again, I don't think Texas, I don't think Houston get enough love in the cannabis scene as far as what we can do. I am from Hiram Clark, Houston, Texas, y'all.
It's just now, it's just now getting to that point where it's being decriminalized enough where people can start moving around. Before, and when I was really in my prime, I would literally pull up in the valet blowing big, where when you hop out the valet, the very first thing that the valet is, the cops are right there, as security for the club or whatever. The cops, as long as you weren't acting like a jackass, they would announce to people, "Oh, hey, Toe Down's here. He got weed. Whoever needs weed, come holler at Toe Down." They took it with a grain of salt back then, but now it's just even more like loosened up, and it's not so serious.
You know what, Toe Down, man? My people keep, like I said, I'm here in VA now. And after I retired from the military, I stayed in VA to pursue my dream of cannabis. You know what I'm saying? So I get phone calls from the city all the time, man. Mac, man, you gotta come back, man. You gotta come back. Oh man, fuck that, I don't know, man.
Listen,
I don't know about
100%, but THCA has been a real big help. The Farm Bill has been extremely helpful here in Texas. It's not 100% recreational yet, but we're on a good path to get there. You got to understand, Texas is the birthplace of ultra conservatism. So it's gonna be a tough mountain to climb, but I think we can get there because the old guard is on its way out, and the new guard is more of our age appropriate friends, and it's not as strict and stringent as it once was.
I just want to say, I gotta give myself a pat on the back. I literally, y'all, just lunched on this King Neptune. I know y'all see it in my eyes. Like, so shout out to the supply chain and King Neptune. That's one of my creations, man. So I had to pause and tell you that.
I can't wait. I cannot wait.
Nah, for sure. Let's get back to it, man. I think this is a banger, bro. Let's see. So, in what ways do you see how cannabis has played a major role in hip hop?
Well, listen, not only has it been something that people can build around, like I said before, music and marijuana play a symbiotic relationship. And when you're in the studio, there's normally weed around, right? And weed is influencing tracks that you might not know had weed influence. A lot of time, your favorite producer that just got finished smoking is banging out a banging track, and now he's using that track where you're going to take it and write to it. Well, before you start writing, you smoke to get your mind right where it needs to be so you can, let it flow. So weed has kind of always influenced music when I've been around. So to see what music and marijuana have really become, it's really been that place where people can come together. And I don't want to say it's like, a trading card, but if I know you got something good and I got something good and we can swap and enhance each other's, life and make it better, well, now it becomes a place and an opportunity for us to exchange information, exchange ideas, work on a track, work on, whatever it may be creatively. And so we'd always provided that, that foundation for that creative stuff. And so even till this day, it's that foundation of us getting together, smoking, coming up with ideas, writing, being creative, whatever it may be. It's that foundation. And so where weed, is at today, it's influenced some of the greatest hits you've heard on the radio to this date. You just didn't know that Jane was the co-writer.
Come on, man. Co-writer. I like that.
Right. That's right. Hold on one second.
Nah, cool.
Sorry about that.
Nah, no worries. I'm actually, bro, looking for an intro to the Business is Blooming podcast. I've been putting it out there. Nobody reached out. I'm going to say it again. I'm looking for somebody to do a song and you collab on it. It's free promo for you because it's going to play every time.
It's cool. I make about a G a week. Fuck school. A year goes by. I'm beginning to grow, but not, man, that used to be my shit, boy.
Yeah.
You just don't even understand,
Man, we can go ahead and do it. We can go and get to it. Because I've been smoking Mary Jane so long, I'm stuck to it. I can't get around. I'm from that town. It's H-Town. It go down and around here. We stay smoking Neptune. You know what I'm saying? Hard pluck from the bloom. Yeah. But I've been rapping, man. I used to do that shit back in the Gap. Come on, man. Like I say, shit, we all grew up freestyling, smoking Mary Jane, passing the blunt. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, that's the way
you
a lot of sessions at Screw's house. That's what it was about. Where's the weed at? Let's smoke. Let's drop some verses and shit. And that's how weed's always just been that glue. It's been that. It's been that way that we can communicate without having to say much at all. It's just a weed smoker knows a weed smoker. And when you can connect on more than one level with your audience, whether it be smoking good or sipping on drink or whatever it may be, banging screw music. When you have multiple connections, it just makes things a lot better, right? He smokes some gas. I know he likes the same music I like. He listens to the same people I listen to. And Screw was able to take a lot of different artists and kind of make them sound cool. He took a lot of East Coast records and made them, digestible for this Southern lifestyle, this laid back, slower walk, slower draw.
Screw was super influential on the hip hop industry as a whole, from New York to Kansas to all the way to UK drill, I would say, because all of them slow down and they bring it back. And that's what Screw did. You know what I'm saying? So Screw was so heavily influential, man. And again, bro, it was something about that time period in Houston, man. Like we was down bad, man. We was losing them left and right. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of our artists didn't get the shine and the potential they were supposed to because they unfortunately passed away. And but they left such an imprint in the little span that they did do it. For instance, Fat Pat. I don't even think Fat Pat was alive when his first album release came out, The Ghetto Dreams. You know what I'm saying? And I'll put on some Ghetto Dreams right now. You know what I'm saying?
It's still an album you can listen to front to end, and just let that motherfucker play, But
Big Steve, My Testimony. Come on, man. Like that's a classic.
Same thing, Same thing with Hawk. A lot of people didn't get to enjoy to go see Hawk live and do a live show, but it was a treat every time. Hands went up in the air. The music would drop, and it'd be like just a sea of hands and syncopation. Going. It was just the craziest shit to see. It let me know I didn't need to go, to North Dakota to be a success. I could drive right down the street and go to San Antonio or Corpus Christi or Austin or Dallas, or I could go to Louisiana,
That's why I'm happy to do this interview with you, because you were so correct. People don't understand that a person or a rapper or entrepreneur can make $1 million in Houston alone. And then you got Port Arthur, you got Galveston, you got Friendswood, you got Katy. It's crazy how Houston is so large of an industry in itself that and people are starting to find out. People are starting to move to Houston, and Houston is growing. I just came back from the city about a month ago now, and just seeing how because I was gone for 10 years in the Navy, so I wasn't, I was on deployments, and I did 3.5 years in Spain, so it was good to be back in my city and see how much it's grown, man. But definitely, man.
Listen, I tell people all the time, a lot of people get stuck and they'll put out a record and then they'll work the record for 4 or 5 weeks and then that's it, right? But for every record that you're dropping, you should have some type of merchandise or some type of something extra to go along with that single, right? and don't stop working it until everybody has heard it, which means never stop working it. Right. You know,
Right.
I see songs that are 8 and 10 years old blowing up on TikTok. Motherfuckers like, where's that from? Like, well, that's almost 10 years old, man. That's almost 15 years old.
Right.
You know,
Right.
Music doesn't have an expiration date if you can make it the right way, right? You know, make it timeless, make it a classic, you know. And how do you do that? Well, you got to connect with somebody on an emotional level. You know, if I can connect with you on an emotional level, I got you, you know.
So how do you envision the role as urban podcasters like myself influencing in shaping the conversation between hip hop and cannabis?
Well, you know, I think things are going back to the ability to have a conversation with somebody, to take the time and really sit down and explore that through a podcast. You know, just recently we had that Cat Williams rant that would have never happened on traditional television interviews, right? Because there's a time limit that they're working. There's a constraint that we got to get what we got in 15 minutes and then on to the next interview. Where in a podcast, you can really go for 2 hours, you know, and sit there and really get to know somebody about what they're about, what their likes, dislikes are. And you can only do that through a long form podcast, right? And then you can take that long form content and make short form content with it. So that 2 hours produces now 40 little short forms of content for
right.
you.
For sure.
I think it's going back to a place where we can really get to know artists. We can really get to, you know, dive deep with these people and find out more than just what their influences are in music or what's their favorite song or, you know, who's on their playlist. You can actually find out why these people are making this music and what music and what weed influence them, you know, throughout, you know.
So I got a question that I've never asked. What's a question that you would want to ask me?
How has marijuana affected your life?
How has marijuana affected my life? It's affected my life in many ways, and I'll tell you how. I'll tell you how it affected me not being able to use it while I did my time in the service.
Well, that's even a better question. Do you think our military should even be tested for marijuana? Because I know a lot of people that are in the services, and a lot of those guys are alcoholics, you know?
Right. And that's exactly what I was gonna say. I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say yes. I don't think you should be under the influence while on watch. Because if you aren't on your shit, people die.
Amen.
And let's be honest, like everybody's when we smoke that good cannabis, sometimes we be slipping. So but do I believe that a person can function and still be in the military smoking cannabis? Yes, because I've seen it. You know what I'm saying? So the Canadian military, they're allowed to use cannabis, but I think their cutoff is like 8 hours before duty.
You know, it's just one of those things where, you know, we create this culture. You know, a lot of people, you know, in Vietnam, they had that whole thing about heroin, right? That was a big deal, right? But it all stopped when we brought them home, you know? Yeah, there were some addicts to it, but it wasn't like an epidemic where it got so bad and so, you know, where it killed off X, Y, and Z because of the heroin uses. Hell, it was a whole fucking another, you know, ocean to get it, right? You know, and
well, they're steady demonizing cannabis, bro, and Normal just put out a report that said that adolescents' cannabis use is actually at an all-time low. So adolescents aren't even just using cannabis, according to that study, you know, like the government demonizes it is, you know. I think
100%.
I do think that the old guard is starting to die off, let's be honest, and they're starting to get new regime in that's pro cannabis, like the guy. I'm so mad I forgot his name, from Louisiana. His ad, you know, his fucking political ad. He sat in a chair in the woods and fired up a blunt while talking his, you know. I think his name's Gary Chambers, if I'm not mistaken,
There you
bro.
go. Yep, I know who you're
But
talking about.
yeah,
Well,
man, like
well, just seeing,
I thought
it's
he
like
had my vote. If I could have voted for him, he'd have had my vote.
it's like we need to get the right people in the right positions to make better laws. It's like the people that are making drug laws have never done drugs. You know, people that are making prison laws and prison reform have never been to prison. And I think once you get somebody in there with some type of experience who really knows what the drug laws or what the drugs do, then you can make the drug laws adequate enough. Because what's happened is, yeah, you can outlaw cannabis, but what's it going to push somebody to? Is it going to push them towards a harder substance? If you don't have, weed there, are they going to pick up smoking crack because that's available?
Right,
And
right.
it really kind of pushes people into, oh, don't do that. But then again, the devil you don't know might actually be worse, right?
One of
Yeah,
the biggest problems I have with it at this moment is that there's a gray area. So
right.
it's federally illegal, but there are people in California and legit businesses, like brands making money off of something that put my uncle Nook in jail 10 years ago because he was riding home from a personal pickup of a £1/4 that he used for his medicine.
Yeah.
Now that's not my story, that's just a scenario I'm pretty sure that happened. You know what I mean? Like,
It
and
happens more than not because, like I said, the people that are making these drug laws, they've never experienced, weed and what its benefits are. And it's just now that we're starting to understand that, yeah, this does have a medical benefit to it. If people could know that they could grow their medicine in their backyard for $5, all the drug companies would be out of business. You wouldn't have a drug lobby anymore. You wouldn't have all these Pfizer's and all these different pharmaceutical companies pushing out way worse substances like this opioid crisis, right? They knew exactly what
for
they're
sure.
giving the public. They knew how addictive it was. Now you've created all these house moms that are addicts. All these people who normally wouldn't be addicts are now
Man,
addicts.
their adolescents are addicts now to these pills. Let's be honest, bro. Every
Right.
song is about popping pills, and I see people in my own family that's like, yo, you know what I'm saying?
Amen.
That ain't what it is. You know what I'm saying?
It's not.
You
It's
know,
not
and so you asked me how has how has cannabis changed, right? For me, right? So I
right.
talked to you about the experience of not being able to do it while doing my 9.5 year bid in the military, while watching my wife smoke all the good weed when we go to different countries and shit. But I had a mission to do. My mission
Right.
was to set me up for this time right now, right?
That's right.
So I gave it up for a little bit, even though I was still active. I wouldn't post pictures of my face. I never went live. I was just Mr. Macblunts alias until I got out. So now that I'm out and I'm able to cultivate in a legal state and grow my own medicine, I feel better than I've ever felt before. I've taken the gabapentins. I've taken
Right.
the trazodone.
Right.
Just all these other like the Prozac, the Wellbutrin, because
Yep.
that's what I seen some shit in the military. So I was separated, and I don't like telling the story, bro, but fuck it. I am retired military because I had PTSD and I broke my back. I had a surgery done where they didn't do it correctly because I was in Spain when they did the surgery in Spain. And
Okay.
so, long story short, they say you can't play Navy anymore. So they retired, right? So I've been on those medicines. But now that I can smoke cannabis, bro,
That
man,
should be a real, life-changing opportunity that should be awarded to every American and not just certain Americans who live in certain states.
right.
You're absolutely right. The federal law says that, hey, marijuana is illegal, but all the states that are allowing marijuana to be grown in, you can't convict somebody when you take them to trial, because the people that voted to legalize marijuana are sitting on those juries, so they can't get a jury to convict in those states because they've already legalized it. So it's that much harder, so they don't waste their money trying to try those cases now.
Right.
But in Texas,
they were can't go home.
You know, they were going to make sure I didn't grow for a minute. You know,
I'm essentially, bro, a prisoner in another state because I can't go home to do what I love. That's fucked up.
A lot of people are in that situation, right? One of my dear friends' name is Richard Lee. The reason he even moved to Oakland was because he could use cannabis there instead of the medication that wasn't working. And he's a paraplegic, you know, and marijuana really changed his life for the better, you know. And so I think that if people can really understand that there's a benefit from CBD, the the marijuana plant itself, like I said, if you could grow your medicine in your backyard, a lot of these companies would be out of business. You know, the reason that we have this marijuana reform anyway is because of the Hearst family. They own timberland, right? Marijuana produces like 6 or 7 times more paper pulp than timber does. But the reason we use it is because the Hearst family had all this timberland, right? And they needed to make paper and sell newspapers, right? But all these laws are antiquated. They're outdated. We need to get new lawmakers in there who know what weed is, who knows what the benefits are, decriminalize it to a point where you're not penalized for the rest of your life when you try to go get a house or a job, that you now have this felony from this marijuana conviction that really it only hurt the situation. It didn't make it any better.
Right. Well said, man. How do I follow up with that? And I felt that in every ounce of it, because I know you're talking about yourself, bro. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy.
So, you know,
I salute. I say this all the time, bro. People that's went and done time for what I'm doing now in a free market, right? I salute y'all, bro, because that's bullshit, bro. For a plant, man. Like on 97.9 The Box, your brother said that he told the judge that I just put it in the soil. God made it grow.
That's right. God is my co-conspirator in this, you know.
Come on,
God deemed everything good, right? And it's only you who will do bad things with what you're given, right?
Correct.
You can enjoy alcohol. You don't need to get drunk, right? You don't have to be high 24 hours a day. You know, you set a time, 420, whatever it may be, right? It's when you take those things and you use them to a point where they become more important than God. You know, that's when there's a problem, right? But if you just look at things and take things in moderation, everything isn't bad. Now, I'm not saying go out and get a kilo of Coke and do you a bump every now and again, but I'm saying that everything has its time and it has its place, right? Let's say you do go to a bachelor party and there is some Coke there and you do a little bit and, you know, you go home the next weekend and everything's fine. You're not using Coke every day, but you had a good time at this bachelor party or whatever it may be. That's all right, you know? But when you're starting to do it every day and then you sell everything that you have just to go acquire it and you're lying to your family to get it and you're
drug,
into a situation where you're forced to make somebody lie to you, you know? Being an addict, I've learned that, I don't have any kids, but I would never want to put myself in a situation that made my child feel like they needed to lie to me. I don't want to have to ask little Tommy if he's smoking weed, right? I would hope that I've taught Tommy enough where when he got ready to smoke, he could come to me and talk to me about it and we do it together, right? I would hope I could, educate my children in that direction, right? Where they know that they could depend on me as a best friend, but understand I'm still their father, right? I'm not going to hand you the state, I'm going to make sure you have all the best information in front of you and then you make the best decision, right?
Right.
I'm not going to tell you to do one thing and then I go do the opposite, So
For
I'd
sure.
hope that I at least educate and instill into my children uh, the knowledge and say, hey, listen, before I go do this, what are the consequences? What's the risk versus reward? Where is that? And I hope people have enough sense to do that with their children. Don't put your kids in a situation where they're forced to lie to you or forced to tell you something you don't want to hear. Hopefully
For sure.
you've taught them well enough where they can make that educated decision. Hey, what's the risk? What's the reward? What am I looking at?
For sure. All right. So finally, bro, last question.
Okay.
What message or legacy you hope to leave through your music and the contributions to the cannabis industry?
Well, I believe you should always leave things better off than what you found them, right? And I think that prison reform is something that we need to take seriously. We have all these old drug laws still on the books where even though cocaine is now 17 to 1, it shouldn't even be 17 to 1. It used to be 100 to 1. If you had 100 grams of crack, I'm sorry, if you had 1 gram of crack, they would charge you as if you had 100 grams if you had crack or whatever, right? But it shouldn't even be that. It shouldn't even be if you have 1 gram, it's 17 grams when you have crack. It shouldn't even be that. I think we should leave things better than what we found them. And drug reform needs to be at the forefront because it does no good locking the breadwinner away for 10, 15 years when anybody that does a drug crime, it should be capped out at 5 years, right? If you haven't learned your lesson in 5 years, you're not going to learn your fucking lesson, right? You
Right.
shouldn't penalize somebody for a 10, 15, 20-year sentence for a drug crime. I don't 100 kilos shouldn't even have 5 years to them.
Right.
So I think drug reform, prison reform, I think all that needs to take a real serious look at and see how we can leave it better, right? We don't want to put our children in the same situation where, just because you made one big mistake, now your life is messed up. Now you can't ever go get a job or you might be locked away for X
For
amount
sure.
of years, right?
For sure.
I think with prison reform, with education, I would like to leave a legacy where, you know, don't don't take my word for it. Educate yourself about it and then make that educated decision. And with prison reform, I feel the
Right.
same way. I think we need to get new lawmakers in there that can at least can say, "Hey, listen, I can make drug laws because I understand the drug situation better because I was exposed to it this way."
We need to have somebody in there that wants to listen, that's actually gonna listen and
That's right.
and see it from a different perspective other than drugs are bad. Okay, drugs are bad.
Don't
He-
don't do
they-
drugs. Drugs are bad. Don't do drugs.
yeah, So I completely agree. But
So,
so down, man, I want to say thank you, bro, for gracing this stage of the Business is Blooming podcast. Man, y'all share this, tap in. Like I said, I'm looking for a intro to my show. If you think you a rapper and you can talk big smoke, hit the line, hit the DM. Todown, you want to give a shout out?
man, first and foremost, man, thanks for having me on Business is Blooming. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed the conversation. Anytime you want to run it back, just let me know. For all my dope heads out there, tap in with the brand. It's dopeheads.com. You can check us out on all social media platforms at the Dope Heads. Just spell it how it's spelled. No Z's, none of that other crazy shit. And tap in with us because, like I said, we're working on prison reform. We're trying to help out people with substance abuse problems. We're working on a 48-room rehab facility right now here in
Nice.
Texas. So, put your money where your mouth is. And if you want to be a dope head, come support some dope heads. And we're just dope heads helping out dope heads, man.
And that's dope as hell, man. Yo, this has been another episode. Peace.